Welcome to Fire Talk, where we give you the latest updates on Southeastern University athletics. I'm Drew Watson, athletics director at Southeastern. Our fearless leader, Dr. Dinkel, is on the road today. He's in Arizona. So we have our number one pinch hitter, Donnie Smith, here. Donnie, how you doing?
It just means I have to come off the bench, and I'm not good enough to make the starting lineup. So thank you.
No, you are phenomenal when you're here. In fact, it's us trying to make sure that we keep our talent level and not have you in here and make us look bad. So you gotta meter it out sometimes. You know what I mean?
Understandable.
So today, I mean, how are you? How have you been?
Great.
Yeah.
Sports are going well. Busy time of year, fun time of year. It makes it easier when there's more games and kind of fill the time a little bit better.
I think I did the calculate. I think half of our 20 sports are in action right now.
Sounds about right.
Which makes for a crazy week, but it's an exciting time, as you say. So speaking of spring sports, we've got our baseball coach, Adrian Dinkel, here. Welcome, Adrian.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for being on our show. Now, we had a milestone for you happen on Friday. You won your 600th career game. Congratulations. Tell us about how that feels for you. You know, I know what you're going to say. It's just another game, you know, whatever. I didn't even know it was happening. But, like, just reflect on it a little bit.
I mean, I didn't. You told me.
I know.
I had no idea until right before. And obviously, it's an unbelievable, accomplishment just, for the players that you've had, the coaches that you've had. I mean, I think that's where it comes from. I think for me that I just get the credit. It just kind of shows that we've kind of found the recipe for success, and I think we've done a good job with it. But that is having good people around you and finding good players and developing those players. And, it kind of just validates what we've been doing, that we've been doing a good job at it.
Yeah, you say you didn't know it was coming. Now, I don't know of a lot of coaches who keep a stroke count in their office, like, oh, there's 551, 500. Donnie, I'm approaching 600. So I think that's good. I think you're focused on the day to day, and not your personal accolades, which is really cool.
Right.
You've gotten there kind of quickly, too. As you look back from win number 1 to win number 600, has there been a common theme, whether it be amongst your staff, whether amongst your players? Has there been a common theme amongst those groups over your time as a head coach?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've had Coach Dahl with me the entire time, and I've just had good people around me. But the common theme is, I think we figured out, at this level, small college level, how to go about it, and the type of people that we want and the type of culture that we want that's made us really successful. And I think we've just continued to build on that every year. So, the common theme is finding, honestly, really good players that want to learn, that want to get better, and that we could develop.
Well, here's your 600th win. Allegedly.
It's clean.
That's allegedly the final out ball.
Thank you.
There's no certificate of authenticity with that, so you're just going to have to take ours and Coach Dahl's word for that.
It's buried under that dirt somewhere.
There's no hologram sticker or anything that we put on that or anything, so.
It's there.
Okay, so you're into your season a little bit here, and we lost 2 in a row for the first time I can remember. Of course, one of them's to University of Tampa, the number one team in Division II. But talk to us about how it's going for you. Like, how would you assess the season so far?
I think it's been a challenge, but I think it's been a challenge in a good way. I think we've always found a way to just simply be more offensive than everybody else, and we've always hit. This is the first time in a long time that we've had to readjust and reset and reestablish how we do some things, even at 14-2. And I think that's been fun. I mean, I told my staff, after that, I said, this is going to really challenge how good of baseball coaches we really are, and the type of adjustments we've made. So I think it's been good because it's helped us grow, helped our players grow. But we've played an unbelievable schedule so far. That we played the best schedule in the country to this point. There's really been no breaks, and we designed it that way for a reason. Yeah. But I think that some of the struggles that have been good for us, not only just for this season, but for future, because we're finding out how good I am at this thing right now, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, you talk about adjustments. Give us an example.
It isn't, believe it or not, it's not even a physical piece. It's more of a human piece. We've talked about, the human factor a lot more and the type of human beings we want to be and the will to and the want to and the adjustments we want to make. And so we've kind of made those adjustments to kind of put those players in place and put those guys on the field and see who's really buying into that factor of it to really understand who we are and how we are and how we want to do it. And so that's been the adjustment piece. It hasn't been, the batting practice, the styles of how we do things. And we do things a little bit different than a lot of people. It's been more of the human element and finding the right pieces of who needs to be on the field that factors into the will to and the want to.
Yeah.
I think as we've talked over the last 3 years, every year you've started with, I think this is the best schedule we've ever put together.
Right.
And you've said that basically at the start of every year. And somehow you've found a way to make it better each of the last couple of years. And I think the quote that stands out to me the most is, we're not afraid to lose a game. We're not afraid to play the best teams because it'll help us down the road.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be afraid to fail. We talked to our guys about it. If you're afraid to fail, you ain't going to be any good at this thing. Right, we're not afraid to get out there and go compete. You're here for a reason. These guys, a lot of these guys came here for a reason. They came here to be put in these situations, to be a part of what we're doing, and my job is to keep them prepared. I'm never going to go back at the end of any year and be able to look at my guys and be like, hey, I didn't prepare you. I'm just not going to be able to do that. We're going to put the best teams in front of you, and so when we get on the field in the World Series, if we get the opportunity to go back, we ain't worried about it. We know we're ready to roll.
Well, what you're referring to there is perspective, right? I mean, your perspective as you teach them, as you give them their proper outlook is not about today. This is about what we want to do as a group moving forward, which is a great life lesson. But you look at perspective from the other teams. Like when we were in Arizona, I'm looking at people saving their number one, their number one for us and trying to get a big win against Southeastern in February. And so, like that, how do you approach that kind of? You just kind of look at it and go, okay, well, I mean, you got to face who you face, right? But talk about that perspective in other teams where they're constantly saving their one and messing with, like, throwing a bullpen game, and it seems odd to me in February.
It's weird.
Is that right?
No, it's not normal, believe me. But anytime we go somewhere, and I think we've earned that right, but we like that, right? That's what we want. But I would never do that. We're just going to go throw, but. I don't blame them. I mean, a win against us means more than a win against someone else a lot of times, right? We feel like we're one of the better programs in the country in small college baseball, and people show it. But I think for us, it's what we want. That's the reason why I like playing these tournaments with 4 or 5 different teams, is we get to see everybody's ones, because I want our guys to accept challenges and understand that I want them to fail, and I want to see how they respond from failure, not only physically but mentally, and that's why we do it. And I think it makes it a lot of fun. It makes every game, because you can get bored if you just simply know that you're better than someone across the field. And so we want them to come at us with everything they've got. And I just want to see if we can continue to block and deflect. And, at the end of the day, we want to make sure our guys understand that we're still trying to, put it on that team and that other dugout no matter how we do it. And I want to see if we're competitive enough to do it.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's talk a little about some of the personnel that makes up this 2024 roster. We'll start on the pitching staff. That's the group that you're probably most excited about coming into the season. We'll also take a look at some of the highlights from this past weekend against Sagu. Rob Adams having a big day in that first game, had a couple of big strikeouts for you. Just having his leadership and experience this season, how much has that helped this group? He's
a pro, man. He's a veteran. That's just what he is. I mean, he's easy, man. The only thing you're doing him is just working on pitch design and making him better, right? Anytime you can have a guy like him and a guy like Darian and Reese and those guys on the bump, I mean, you feel pretty good about it. Like we told you before, I mean, I've been doing this in the small college level for a long time. Mm-hmm. This is probably the deepest small college pitching staff ever. Whether we continue to get better on the front side of it and guys continue to throw the ball over the plate, we'll see. But how very often do you have this level? You have guys 95, 97, 98 to 100. But having guys like Rob and Darian and some of these other people having leaders are the reasons why we've been successful.
How often have you seen triple digits at this level on the radar gun?
We've had it a few times. Usually not over the plate. It's usually the top of the backstop.
No, in your time coaching in the NAIA, how often have you seen that?
Honestly, I think there's been maybe 8, and I think we've had 5, right? And so it's been very, very, very lucky. But, it's the kid this year, it's a little different, right? It gets out of hand a little bit different than a lot of other guys, and he has a chance to play for a long time.
Now, there's you and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago. There's guys who haven't had success elsewhere. They come and you become their pitching coach, their head coach, and all of a sudden they're successful. And you and I talked about your approach. Talk to us a little bit about, what your approach is when it comes to pitching and getting the most out of the guys on your roster.
Well, there's 2 different sides of that, Ron. We get a lot of kids that, we call it the beat dog syndrome, where they've been somewhere else and they've struggled. They haven't been really loved up on. They haven't been told how good they are, right? And kids, they need to hear it, right? And so our ultimate job is to show them that we do believe in them, which we do. That's why we bring them in here. Mm-hmm. And then you flip over to the physical side, right? We're going to create good movers. I think we're very, very blessed and very lucky with the guys that we have on the pitching side of things here, that we feel like we're some of the better ones in the country that teach people how to move properly, right? Whether that's through water bags or whatever it may be. We're just going to teach them to move more athletically. And once they understand that's how it's done, it just creates and cleans up arm patterning. And next thing you know, they're better. But that also starts with them being loved up on, right? If they trust you and they know that you have their best interest in mind and you know they're going to be good, they want to be good for you. And then it just takes the physical side to the next level.
At the plate, you've got a couple of guys at the corners that have been pretty good for you for the past 3 years, in Isaac Nunez and Gary Laura. Give us an idea of what they brought to your infield and to your offense this year.
Just leadership. At the end of the day, leadership. They're both good players. Early right now in the season, I think they're both struggling, but they're allowed to do that after 2 really, really good years, right? Those guys are two All-Americans, and so I'm excited to see what happens over these next couple weeks. I have a feeling those two are going to break out and everything's going to start going the other direction. But anytime you can have 2 players like that on the corners, and anytime you can move a first-team All-American from shortstop over to third base, in that situation, you feel like, you've got a chance to be pretty good.
Now, you're doing things, obviously, people throwing their number one against us a compliment.
Yeah.
They're saving. But you've got to find ways with the record that we've had the past few years to continue to challenge your guys. And one of those ways was evident this past weekend when, guys are getting pulled in the middle of a count. And I'm going to ask you about that because that's unconventional.
Okay.
I'm sitting in the press box and one of your guys gets pulled with a 3-1 count. And so talking to you afterwards about that, it makes sense to me. It's uncomfortable because people don't play like that. People don't coach like that. But what are you trying to teach your kids when they get pulled in the middle of it at bat?
And it just goes back to what I said earlier, the accountability and the human piece. It's the human factor of it. We were asked to do something. And if you don't do it, you don't do it in the real world, in the business world, you ain't going to have a job very long. And I asked those guys to do something, and then they didn't do it, so they're not going to work for much longer. Somebody else is going to go in and do their job for them. And and that's just kind of the mindset for it. We had that conversation of, hey, man, this is our expectation of who we are. This is our expectation of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And if you don't want to do it, we're going to find somebody else that wants to. And if I got to yank you with 2 strikes, then you're going to come out of the game with 2 strikes, and we're going to move on to somebody else.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of coaches talk like, hey, we can't do that. Hey, we can't do that. But it continues to happen. And sometimes in the life of a young person, even old people, it's the shock value that gets your attention.
Right.
And so nobody likes to be pulled. I played baseball. Like, what? Like, excuse me? He's got to be kidding. No, he's not kidding. Hit the bench. Right. But the shock value, I think, is really important.
Right.
Like when you're saying something to them they're not used to hearing, and then all of a sudden they're sitting on the bench. Well, they've got to evaluate if they want to change or not. And if they don't, they'll continue to sit on the bench.
It takes what it takes.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's what it is. Bottom line is it takes what it takes. If you're not willing to and you don't have the will to, the want to, and the guts to do it, then it ain't going to happen.
Right.
I'm going to make it, but while I'm in charge, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, we're going to move a different direction.
It's good.
Spring break, always a busy week for you guys. A lot of northern teams come down to try and get a volume of games in before they go back to the snow. How do you and your staff go about handling this volume of games and the heavy workload coming up the next 10 days?
We actually enjoy it. And we enjoy it for a pitching purpose. Reason why is because it actually gives us the opportunity to rest guys. And before we run into, the conference late that we're going to run into. And so we just run and we staff games. And so it's actually fun for us because we get to line it up. We get to see who's who. We get to see how we're doing it and what we're doing it. And so nothing better than a baseball coach or a baseball player playing all the time.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of fun just playing once every week. It's fun to play all the time. You want to play all the time. This game, if you ain't playing every day, it's hard to be good at it. So for us, it's actually probably the time of the year, besides the postseason, we look forward to the most, right? And you get the opportunity to see guys do different things, and guys that haven't had much of a factor all of a sudden become a role, and that's what makes this fun.
Donnie, does that apply to your golf game? The more you play, the better you get?
It does not.
You need to keep playing.
Me neither.
Yeah. Not
Me
happening.
too.
I can keep playing, but that score is not going to change.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Do we have a clip? We got a clip of Rob?
Yeah, we got a couple of Rob Adams strikeouts from the weekend. You
yeah.
can
We've had
give us an
plenty of
idea of
those.
what we've seen here.
He's had plenty.
Worked up in the zone a little bit there.
You know what? He's back to the 22, Rob. Deceptive and velo's up, fastball's up. All of a sudden, he's running 90-mile-an-hour fastballs in there with tough to see. And so, I'll believe it or not, when we talk about how we find him, talk about pitching and figuring it out. I couldn't figure it out last year. What was wrong with him compared to 22 when we were scrimmaging Rollins? And I just asked the third baseman. I said, "Hey, man, when you face this kid, will you tell me what you see when it's hard to see what you do?" And he came over. He's like, "It's actually hard when he jumps." So the whole time we were working on the hinge and the hop, he was like, "No, it's when he jumps." We go tell Rob, he starts jumping, no one hits him. So we had a player on another team actually figure it out for us, but it was like, hey, man, tell me what you see. So.
Well, and again, that's a unique perspective that I think you've gained over the years of coaching, but that's not something typically coaches have a certain level of pride, and you're not going to ask somebody on the other team to, you're just not going to do that. But I think the best basketball coaches will say, hey, buddy, will you come scout and tell me how you would play us? And so it's a different level of thinking that's led to the success we've had. So
been lucky.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us, Coach.
I appreciate you having me, guys.
Good luck in your gauntlet next week with spring break.
Get a case for that.
We're taking it home?
You're taking it.
Taking it home? I don't know if I need more baseballs around the house, man. Give it to my dog?
Looks like your dog already had it.
You did? Yeah. Well, thank you.
Peterson & Myers takes pride in the accessibility of their experienced attorneys, and in a thoughtful and innovative manner, they solve problems for clients. In addition to legal skills, Peterson & Myers are personally and deeply involved in the communities in and around Polk County. Peterson & Myers, PA, an official partner of Fire Athletics. Now, our track and field, let's get to the sports, Donnie.
Yeah.
Great part of the show. Just we get to review all that's going on right now. Our track and field team travels to Brookings, South Dakota this week for NAIA Indoor Championships. Way up there.
Just where you want to spend a weekend in March is Brookings, South Dakota.
It's actually going to be a little bit mild there this week. I think it's going to be in the mid to upper 50s.
Cold front went through yesterday, so they're going to have a chance to recover. I think the last 2 years that we've sent a member of our staff there, they've gotten to experience snow for the first time.
Yes.
So much more mild temperatures this year. It doesn't matter. It's still an indoor championship.
Yep.
Really excited about this group. Obviously, the men going to have a little bit of a target on their back coming back as the defending champions. Group looks a little bit different, but still a couple of faces that you can expect to do well again. Excited to see what Kyle Manuel does in his last hurrah in the shot put, going through his final tournament. James Williamson III's had a great season. Joseph Taylor coming into this year has been outstanding as well on the men's side. And then on the women's side, I think Ermiris Mendez, I think she's in just about every event this weekend, in the 60 and the hurdles, running a couple of relays. Busy weekend, nothing new for her. You look back at what she did in the Sun Conference Championship.
Yep.
She's in just about every event.
Yep.
Outdoor, I think she did the multis along with a bunch of other events. So no surprise for her, but a couple events to look at are going to be the race walk, where Ashlyn Poulin's been outstanding this year, one of the best in the NAIA, and TJ Sanders a chance to get on the podium as well.
You talk about Mimi, Aramis Mendez. She was hurt last spring, and so I don't think we saw, Coach Dotson didn't see, what's happening now. And it's really exciting to see her have the success she's having. Where do fans, if they want to tune into the results, where do they find that?
Yeah, there's a link on our website at fire.seu.edu, as well as you can search for Dakota Timing. They'll have all the live timing and scoring. A lot of the prelims are going to take place on Thursday and Friday. If you're in the top 8, you move on to the championships on Saturday.
Okay. Wrestling, all right, every year. Indoor track and wrestling, same weekend. Wrestling heads to Wichita, Kansas for NAIA, the national meet. What do we look like? What do matchups look like up there?
Things look a little bit different this year. It's a 3-day tournament now.
Yep.
So a lot less matches per session. So instead of having to wrestle multiple matches in a morning session, then come back in the evening, that's a long morning session. So it's now a 3-day tournament where you shouldn't get any more than 2 matches in a session. But the challenge is going to be getting on the scale 3 days in a row and trying to hit that number. So going to take a lot of discipline by the guys. Saw them this morning, taking them to the airport at 5:15. Pretty quiet. I think they're all in weight cutting mode a little bit. So going to be a busy weekend. We hosted the AAC championship. Parker DeBrocki ended up winning the 149. Last time we had a conference champion, it was Sal Silva. He ended up winning the national championship. So that was going to be an all SEU final at 149 with Chris Kelly. So those would be 2 guys to keep an eye on as well. Gabe Jacobs comes in seated 4th at 285. He finished 3rd last year. But we're one of only 3 teams that have 12 wrestlers going to this tournament. So taking a full roster should put us in a pretty good position to compete for the team title. Unfortunately, we got a lot of first-round buys. I know as a basketball coach, you get excited about a first-round buy. In wrestling, that's going to cost you some team points because you don't get anything for moving on to the second round there.
Well, what people may not know about you is you know wrestling. You know wrestling pretty well. And so what do you think the extra day and the extra rest does to the tournament? As far as if you're an individual wrestler, does that help you or does it hurt you?
I think it will. I mean, if you're coming off of a tough cut, you're only going to have to worry about that one match in the morning. Then you get a nice long layoff, maybe some more chance to kind of manage that weight a little bit, so that way it's not as stark the next day. It's really a little bit of an unknown. There's not really a 3-day tournament that people go to that you can kind of say, well, here's our template for that. So it'll be really interesting to see how this is handled. And if it's not, I think the wrestling coaches will come right back and say, I think we made a mistake. Let's look at it this way.
Yeah. Should be interesting. I'm going up there on tomorrow morning early. I fly out, so I'm looking forward to the full day tomorrow and seeing what happens. Women's basketball. Let's talk about them. Big conference win on Saturday against Warner. 74-52 secured us as the regular season champion. Talk a little bit about that.
We got some help on Wednesday, some unexpected help, I think, when you kind of looked at some of the chalk on the standings to see St. Thomas and Ave Maria end up dropping into third and fourth in the conference. Yeah. And then for us to be able to move up and do what we had to do, pick up a couple of wins there at the end of the season. Wasn't always pretty at times, but they figured out a way to win with this veteran group. We'll look at some clips. I thought Becky Kalaidiev was outstanding last week. Had a career-high game on Wednesday against Florida Memorial with 30 points, and then came back with another big effort on Saturday against Warner. Let's take a look at what she did during that week of play.
Coleman looking right side for Anya Knoflak. Open look from Becky.
Yeah, I thought she shot well. She handled the ball well, saw the floor well.
Yeah, 8 of 10 in that contest. Also got it done a little bit on defense. This is a little bit of teamwork here coming off the steal. Shout out to Rebecca Cook, graduate assistant on that one. Great behind-the-back pass by Maya Herman, who's going to factor in as the freshman of the year. And hopefully Becky gets a pretty good look at Conference Player of the Year, just the way that she did. And we'll have a chance to kind of dig into her story a little bit more later on this week. But just coming back from the obstacles that she's had the last 2 years to play it all and then play at a Conference Player of the Year level is incredible.
It's a miracle, really. I mean,
is.
When you consider where she was right after that accident in intensive care, I mean, it's phenomenal. We praise God for that. But, I look at, you mentioned Maya Herman, and, I coached 15 years, and typically this time of year, freshmen are running out of gas. They have not played a season this long. Doesn't seem like Maya's running out of gas, nor any of the other freshmen. And so it's good to see that happening and then playing good down the stretch here.
Yeah, absolutely. Still average around 10 a game. I think Ariana Smoot is another freshman that's played really well this year at times, getting some key minutes and just trying to figure out what college basketball is about.
Yeah, looking forward to this weekend conference tournament. We play at 5 on Friday against St. Thomas, which a few weeks ago people are thinking that's going to be the championship game. But, we play them at 5. Kaiser plays Ave Maria at 7. And then a championship at 7 p.m. that night. 2
weeks ago, Wednesday, that was a game for first place in the Furnace, and now it's a conference semifinal game.
Yeah, should be a good weekend. There's those 4 teams have really battled all year, and obviously, you mentioned the 3-way tie that we went into last Wednesday, and then unbelievably, St. Thomas and Ave lose that night, and so. As you said, good to see our team take advantage of that situation and close it out.
And there was also a scenario where had the results gone a little bit differently that week, there could have been a 4-way tie for first. So that's how close this league has been this year.
It's really good to see the conference stepping up like we are. Let's talk about men's basketball. They closed out the season with a loss in the Sun Conference quarterfinal last night at Ave Maria.
Yeah, I thought the defense that Ave Maria played in the first half was probably the key factor there. They forced Southeastern into some tough shots and really some shots that weren't really in their game. Kind of held pace a little bit, though, for a while. And then I think in the beginning of the second half, once the Gyrenes got that three-pointer to fall a little bit more, it opened up the baseline. And really, they had their choice at that point on how they wanted to attack it. I think you got to give our guys a lot of credit, though. Yep. They whittled it to 6 with about 100 seconds left. Yep. Had a takeaway. I think if you get a score on that, the game looks a little bit differently because then you're looking at 4. Ave Maria's got to burn a timeout and try and resituate themselves, but able to get that ball back, and were forced to foul and unable to come up with the extra baskets and stops. But they really didn't fall apart there at the end. They really gave it their best effort they could for the full 40 minutes.
And they've had a few games like that, and I think that my office is right above the gym. I mean, their practices are passionate. They go hard. You can tell that when you watch them. And it really has played out in some of the comebacks. The comeback at Kaiser, down 15 with 4 minutes left, and had a chance at the buzzer to tie it. And same with last night. I felt Ave Maria thought they had the game salted away. And all of a sudden we hit a couple shots and Coach Copeland's like, timeout, got to talk about this. And as you said, that turnover, turnover where we then turned it over, tough, really tough, because you could have cut it to 4 or 3 there and really made it interesting. But, guys played hard, as we said, and proud of them. And looking forward to what they can do in the offseason here.
Yeah, great effort by Reggie Messiter in his final game with the Fire. 20 points, got it done at both ends of the floor. Came up with some big steals. So definitely going to watch. Definitely going to miss number 2 running up and down the floor next year
for sure. All right, softball. A lot of softball was played here last weekend. We had Grandview, we had British Columbia in town. Tell us about how that went.
There was a high volume of games and a high volume of innings as well. Made a lot of these games close. Had to grind out some of those games. The third game against British Columbia, great pitchers duel. There were no earned runs in that game. Just the kind of pitching that we saw in those contests. We'll take a look back at a clip real quick to see how Southeastern was able to come away with the win. Small ball has been the key for this group the last couple of years under Coach Watkins. So you get 2 on, 2 in scoring position, bunt back to the pitcher, good speed at third base. Rayleigh McKinney squeezed in on a well-placed bunt by Chapel Cunningham and able to come away with a split all 3 days against Grandview, as well as the 4-gamer against British Columbia. UBC coming out of the Cascade Conference, great reputation for softball up there in the northwest part of the state. They've had a handful of teams win in advance of the World Series the last couple of years, so good to get in front of that caliber team as well.
Yeah, and I think, over the last couple of years, and with softball, you see it with baseball. We talked with Coach about it. The schedule's tough.
Right.
And, and you hope that as we get into conference season, that experience from these games really goes into that, and hopefully we're at the top of the conference standings when it's all said and done.
And I think when you look at the schedule that they play this weekend, when they go to Gulf Shores, it matches that as well. You're playing LSU Alexandria, who's not too far removed from playing in the World Series. William Woods has been a solid program. Lindsey Wilson was the first place we ever went for an opening round. Mobile we've seen a number of times, and then an upstart program at Texas A&M San Antonio.
Yeah, so get out. I mean, you got to get out and see softball. If you haven't been out to the complex, get out there. It's an exciting team. A lot of energy out there. When I coached softball for a time. It's a forgettable in my career. It's a forgettable few years there. It was needed, but as a baseball player, I just could never understand the cheers.
I was going to ask if you were scripting those and what part of practice you devoted to the chorus of chants.
We didn't devote any time in practice to that. In fact, the first game that I walk out there and all of a sudden they start cheering. I'm like, what are you doing? That's embarrassing. Stop it. But it's just part of the game. And it actually, when I coached, I didn't get it. But they wanted to do it. So whatever.
Great.
But as an AD and just especially watching this team through the years, like they're funny. I mean, they get into it. I think it's part of the game. And so if you've got a softball team that has no chance, no cheers, you kind of looking over there like, is there a team in the other dugout? And it's almost a competition. Yeah, between the dugouts, which is really cool.
I think it's just a different volume of it. In baseball, you talk about dugout energy and picking the next guy up. It's just taken to another level on the shorter diamond.
Yeah. And when softball comes out to baseball,
you can tell.
I mean, it's absolutely noticeable. So we love that. So beach volleyball, Coach Wheeler got her first win last weekend.
We do not have that volleyball here to present to her, but nevertheless,
we don't. But she's on her way to 600. So I know they were down in Miami last weekend. How'd it go down there?
Yeah, played pretty well. Ended up sweeping Florida Memorial 5-0. Lost to St. Thomas 3-2. But the 3 all went to a third set. So right in every single match. And they've got a trip to Tavares coming up this weekend where they'll take on Truett McConnell and St. Andrews. And
that'll be interesting because we've got a number of pairs that are out on missions trips over spring break. So Coach has got to kind of mix it up here, and we'll see what happens.
Awesome.
Tennis. The men's and women's teams are both coming off big wins over Cumberland University, where the women won 4-0, the men won 4-1 against the number 13th ranked team. Tell us about those matches.
Yeah, additionally, we talk about not shying away from anybody. Drew Dickens has really done that during his time at Southeastern. I remember coming back from nationals one year, and he was kind of picking my brain. It's like, all right, so who who do you think that you saw that we could match up with?
Yeah.
And sure enough, he starts scheduling teams ranked around that area, found some other teams, just kind of creeping your way up. It's like, all right, we need to schedule some top 15 teams, some top 10 teams. Well, now that we have 2 top 10 teams, we start going after the number 1 team.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, again, that was a team that when the women made the national semifinal last year, okay, now you got to go play Georgia Gwinnett.
Yep.
So they went and played Georgia Gwinnett this year. So now it's not as much of a shock when they get to Mobile, if they're in that national semifinal again, when you go against the green and gold that have won some odd dozen national championships,
Yep.
it seems like. You kind of figure out what you're up against a little bit. So that was an additional part of this trip, along with a scrimmage. So in addition to the win, also a valuable lesson learned in those matches against Gwinnett.
And Drew's done a great job. I mean, he's an alum of the program and has really taken it from a good program to a great program.
Absolutely.
You know, it's been fun to watch that. You know, and we'll have him on the show here in a couple of weeks. But you know, he was one of the first student athletes I met when I started here at Southeastern, and now he's the coach and just doing a phenomenal job. And he takes a lot of ribbing.
It has cemented his status as the department's little brother for the rest of his life.
Yes.
Even if he's coaching here in his 50s, I'm pretty sure he will still be the department's little brother.
Yeah, it's great to work with him, and he's a good sport. You know,
Has to be.
Yeah, we won't talk fantasy football for Drew's sake. Well, that's a wrap for today, Donnie. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. As we close the show, I want to remind everyone about our home games this week. Baseball will be at home Saturday at 12 and 3. Women's basketball will host the Sun Conference Tournament, as we said, Friday at 5 p.m., with a game coming after that at 7. Make sure you check our website at sufire.com for the latest news in fire athletics. You can find the event calendar there, as well as a link to watch all of our games for free. Good luck to all of our teams this week.
Yeah, go Fire.
Go Fire.